human.
It's time for Jonny Athletic, Jonny Athletic, and he's on with Dan Barreiro right now.
It is that time again, Jonny Athletic showing his, I think, athleticism, his nimbleness. Because 2 hours ago, I said, how about 5 o'clock? And he said, fine. And then right before the show, I said, how about 4 o'clock? Because I forgot Leber takes us into the 5 o'clock hour. He says, fine. That's Jonny. I mean, he's helpful to anybody and everybody but members of the hockey community. Is that accurate?
I think accurate, yeah. Not just, I would say, athletic, Dan, but also coachable, right? I mean, you know, you just put me in the spot that you need, and I'm going to get it done for you. And so, a real glue guy. And so I just tell him, Blakemore, as you gather around your Thanksgiving tables on Thursday, I hope you just have a little thought for me there in the gratitude that you express.
It looks more and more as if Brosmer is going to be the guy on Sunday. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
You know, I mean, I guess I'm to the point now, Dan, where it's probably a good thing just in terms of I'm not even one of those. I'm not on the Guardsy bandwagon of, hey, he might be the quarterback of the future, right, and he's the diamond in the rough right under our noses and all these things, and the future starts now kind of a thing. But it just seems like after the last couple of weeks here that J.J. McCarthy needs a break. And I still would like to see him play a lot more down the stretch here of the season so that you can get even closer to a true evaluation. But it looks like his head is swimming. It looks like this is a little too much for him right now. And I just think it may be a detriment to keep throwing him out there, especially against one of the best defenses in the league this week on the road. And so if it is Brosmer, I'll be intrigued to see how he does, but I'll also think this might be a little bit of a need on J.J. McCarthy's part to just catch his breath, watch from the sideline, and then try and go at it again, a couple weeks down the road, provided Brosmer doesn't just completely light it up and change things around, in a heartbeat.
Are you a big fan of the EPA? And by that, I don't mean the Environmental Protection Agency.
Well, I'm the other one is going away. So, I mean, I don't know if, being a fan of that one is worthwhile right now, even though I was in the past. But EPA, I guess I sort of am, because it really does seems like an analytic and a metric that all the smart football guys cite, like chapter and verse, as if it's the Bible. But I'll be honest with you, I don't have a great grasp on exactly what it means.
I think it stands for expected points added.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be as highfalutin as any of them. And the stat that's getting a lot of attention today is that since the 2005 season, 813 quarterbacks have thrown 150 passes or more to qualify for the EPA. And of all those, JJ ranks 807th. Now, there's another analytic in which he's second to last, only to Jamarcus Russell, I think, that goes even further back, which none of which is particularly good. I threw this out earlier that to add to several sticky wickets for this franchise right now, I think there's this one. I believe you don't have to be invested in Brosmer brownstones to intuitively think there's a chance that today, or let's say in his first season of actual work in regular season games, Brosmer might be readier than J.J. McCarthy. But the sticky wicket part is that doesn't necessarily mean that eventually he will be the better answer. Because as you know, it's not just about what you're doing, it's about what people project you're capable of doing, the proverbial cliched upside. So that adds another layer here where I can see Brosmer coming in, not necessarily lighting it up, but looking more professional. And I think it's going to be because Vikings fans are so vulnerable right now, they're going to grab onto any of it and say, this is the guy. This is the guy we invest in forever and ever and ever, and it's not unprecedented. Every once in a while, that's, that works, but it's still rare, and that's what's funky about this whole situation on top of all the other permutations that the Vikings are dealing with here, because it isn't just, he's 2 years older. In fact, he's 24 and a half. He's more of he's not a mobile guy. He's just, I'm going to drop back, read, and throw. So I wouldn't be surprised if he actually looks better, but I don't know that necessarily means he's the answer.
Yeah, Dan, that was really well said. And here's what I'm about to say is going to sound very smart alecky and hot takey and even maybe disrespectful. And I do not mean that because, as I've said on the show, as I've said elsewhere, I was a J.J. McCarthy guy coming
Me
in.
Too.
I do think that eventually, I'm not ready to give up on him. I'll just say that. But I will say this right now, today, putting Brax Brosmer out there, whatever we see could be better than what we've seen from J.J. McCarthy because it's hard not to be better. That's the problem here, Dan, is as pragmatic as I have been and as patient as I want to be with J.J. McCarthy, because that's what you have to do when you are a young quarterback and when you're developing a young quarterback. What has Kevin O'Connell said time and time again? Organizations fail quarterbacks more often than quarterbacks fail organizations. So you have to stick with it.
Yep.
You cannot panic. You can't do all these things. But every week that we have seen outside of the 2 fourth quarters against Chicago and the game against Detroit, which was solid, everything else has not been just bad. It's been historically bad. It's been awful. And so that is what is coloring all of this right now, is that you put Brosmer out there, and if he is not historically bad, he's better than J.J. McCarthy. Now, to your other point, there is a reason that J.J. McCarthy was taken 10th overall and Max Brosmer wasn't taken at all, is because there's physical tools, there's the things that he showed from a leadership perspective at Michigan, winning the national championship, doing all of those things that many scouts, not just the Vikings, believe that, hey, this is a guy who could be a long-term quarterback solution. Always one of the biggest knocks against him was he hasn't played much football. Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, all these other players played a ton of football in college. J.J. McCarthy didn't, so his learning curve may be a little longer. But that said, man, it has been so bad that it really does make you think about the whole larger picture probably sooner than you want to.
Yeah, that's very fair. And, I've made this point before when I get texters who will remind me of some of the numbers and the production of people, some of the great names in pro football history, including John Elway, Peyton Manning, etc. But what they tend to leave out is most of the time, the teams they inherited were also starting over. The supporting casts were sketchy at best, awful at worst. And, we get it. This offensive line hasn't been what it's supposed to be, but there is abundant talent relative to what most teams are dealing with when they draft a number one quarterback with the number one overall pick after finishing, 2-15 the year before. That has to be factored into the historic nature here of his performances time after time. I honestly thought I think we've reached a point where that's not sustainable in the short run. And I believe that the head coach was borderline abusive with Carson Wentz, not pulling him in the fourth quarter of his last game. I think it's borderline abusive, mentally speaking, forget the concussion, just mentally speaking, to throw out the same guy again if this is where he is at right now. And that's not the same as giving up on him forever, but I firmly believe that we're in that same category of the head coach needs to be the head coach and show some element of understanding of the situation and even some mercy.
Yeah, and also it's on two fronts that way, Dan, because I agree with you in terms of it could be detrimental to J.J. McCarthy's own personal development and confidence, belief that he can do this, all of those things. That's in one pile. In the other pile is you could be damaging his ability to lead his teammates going forward. There's going to be a point when he keeps airmailing these passes to Jalen Naylor and Justin Jefferson and to all these guys, when he takes a sack when he shouldn't, when he holds the ball too long, when he does all of the things that he is doing, that the veterans on this roster will check out on him.
Exactly.
And I do think that JJ is trying his darndest and probably doing as best he can to keep the faith, to keep communication open, to keep these guys staying behind him. And most of them have, by all accounts, seemingly stayed there. But you can't go much further with games like you had in Green Bay and for most of Chicago and still keep the faith and the trust of your teammates. And once you lose them, that's really hard to get that back.
Let's do this. Let's get a quick pause in. I got a lot more to get to with Jonny, including the Wolves meltdown on the Friday night in Phoenix and some games they have up ahead, including the historically good Oklahoma City Thunder. So much more with our guy, Jonny Athletic. Later this hour, Ben Leber and bonus Luigi to talk about the hottest team in all of hockey. Louie will join at 5.
Friday football feast will come to Buffalo Wild Wings Mall of America. PA, Nordo, Alec Lewis live all morning to get you set for Sunday's showdown. Doors open at 8. Great food, drinks, prizes, including Trade Home Shoe gift cards. Details, KFAN.com. Your account.
Part 2 with Jonny Athletic, and it looks like, at least in this room, we got the Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line back. We appreciate the ongoing efforts of Program Director Chad Abbott to get that done. And so we're working some kinks out of a new system that hopefully will be back to relative normal very soon. So I will accept your texts as long as it doesn't log me out. Jonny, part 2. Let me quickly get one other Vikings question in. This is fairly aggressive, this text. This comes in from Chris. And, with the quarterback discussion obviously dominating everything, rightly, maybe we don't spend enough time on some other things. Chris writes, I want to know why we have the 2 worst safeties in the league and no one's talking about it. We're happy for Hitman, 200 games, but my God, he and Metellus can't tackle and can't cover. Pretty aggressive, but I will say safety is one of those positions where you almost feel like, well, if you don't notice them, maybe that's not a good thing in this particular case. Like, are they making plays? What are we thinking about our safety performance, our secondary performance, maybe more generally, but our safeties?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really glad that you brought this question up and that the texter brought it in, because I do think it is very easy and understandable to pile on to J.J. McCarthy and to fixate on quarterback because it's that important. But one of the things we said coming into this season was one of the reasons that J.J. McCarthy was in just an unbelievable spot to succeed as a young player with very little experience was that of everything around them, including a big play, havoc-wreaking defense that was going to keep opponents down, limit their possessions, turn the ball over, and get the ball to J.J. McCarthy in advantageous position. And the Vikings defense has been solid. They've been okay, but they haven't been anywhere near what they need in terms of playmaking, especially on the back end. That includes Harrison Smith, Josh Metellus, Theo Jackson. That also includes the cornerbacks, Byron Murphy, Rodgers, outside of the one unbelievable game against the Bengals. Like, nobody is making any plays. When they force a punt, that's great, but they need more. And there were a couple of throws that Jordan Love made on Sunday that were really great throws in the face of pressure and blitzing, but that the ball hung up in the air a long time, and nobody in the secondary was able to get close enough to break it up, to make it a contested catch even for some of these receivers that allowed the Packers to move the chains. And so, yes, McCarthy is problem number one that the Vikings are dealing with, but by no means is he the only issue here. This defense has been very underwhelming and very mediocre for a lot of the season, and they need to start making plays to help their young quarterback, and they're just not doing it.
Friday night in Dateline Phoenix, there was a play, and you'll be able to tell me what the precise play was, because I, for the life of me, no longer remember it. but it was in the last, I want to say within the last 2 minutes, a great hustle play by somebody in a Minnesota uniform that had the bench emptying onto the court. And everybody was feeling like, is that the Randall play? Okay, we're going. Yeah. What was the play exactly? What did he do?
It was just a loose ball.
That's what it was. Yes, right.
Roll around he got down on the floor and he wrestled it away.
And called timeout.
And then Chris Finch called a timeout smartly.
Yep.
And it was, to your point, Dan, it was the most spirited the Wolves bench has been all year. Yeah. And just like the vibes that were going, it was real. It was a great play by Randall.
So you're feeling at that point like, hey, we're going to take care of business here. Phoenix is not great, but they're hellaciously better than they have been, and we're fine. And then they end up blowing, 8-point lead in the last 50 seconds with a couple missed free throws, 2 horrific turnovers as well. It's one game. We've been through this before, but it was a decidedly awful meltdown, I thought, and it appeared to me that the head coach was not particularly pleased about it after the game either.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing, though, Dan, is like for 46 minutes, you said, hey, the Wolves are right in position to be for the best win of the year, and they haven't beat any good teams yet. If you want to put Portland there, fine, but they had played really well. They scratched and clawed. Played good defense down the stretch. Ant was brilliant for most of the game. You're like, okay, here, step up in weight class, and they really responded. But the biggest issue with that loss is that it really does lay at the feet of their 3 most important people. Anthony Edwards missed 2 free throws and had a really bad turnover. Julius Randle had 2 awful turnovers. And Chris Finch should have had Jalen Clark in the game defensively for the last possession when Colin Gillespie got the easy shot. And so all 3 of their big guys that they need to come through in these situations all had failures. And so it's one of those games that they never should have lost. Everything that could go wrong did. And you're right, it is just one game, but for a team that is trying to show that it's not just a cupcake eater, that it can actually win these close games against good teams. That was a hugely disappointing meltdown over those last 50 seconds, coming thanks to their 3 most important people.
Is that where, I assume Conley wasn't on the floor at that point, but is that a situation where at some point you say, no matter what has happened before then, we got to get a pure point guard back on the court?
I mean, it's possible, Dan, but I will tell you, like, watching that game, this was not a good Mike Conley game. Yeah. He was struggling, and so in these instances, typically, what you see is the main goal is to get the ball in the hands of your best player and make him put pressure on the defense, get to the line, do whatever. And they did that. Well, they had the ball either in Anthony Edwards' hands or Julius Randle's hands every time on all of those possessions, and on all of them, both of those guys failed. So even if Mike Conley is out there, I don't think the ball is in his hands. Or if not for maybe a few seconds, and then he's going to get it to Ant, he's going to get it to Randle. And the problem is that both of those guys turned the ball over. Randle missed a free throw outside of that 49-second window, but like in the last 2 minutes. And so it was a case of, I don't think that having Conley on the floor would have changed the outcome, because both of those guys would have had the ball in their hands. Now, would Jalen Clark have changed the outcome on the last possession? Maybe, but I just don't think that this is the case where Conley would have saved them.
We got Sac tonight there, and then Oklahoma City there. Are those the next 2?
That's right. Yeah. So, I mean, no Sabonis tonight. So and they always play well there. It should be another one where they win. But, I mean, Wednesday night before Thanksgiving against those monsters in OKC, that is going to be a big, big test. So I'll be down there for that one. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, they what is Oklahoma City now? Is it 12-1?
17-1.
I've left out 5. And isn't the average margin for victory bordering on like 2 or 3 of the best all-time regular season record teams as well?
Yeah, they're just murdering everyone. Here's what I will say. We have talked a lot about the Wolves having a terrible or super easy early season schedule. Yeah. I think they're like top 5 or 4. Oklahoma City is 1. So like they have had an easy schedule, but it doesn't matter. I mean, they are just destroying people, and they don't have Jalen Williams. There's been a bunch of games without Lou Dort, or plenty of their other guys have been in and out of the lineup, and they are just a machine. They just keep rolling. So for a team like the Wolves, who does have trouble, kind of getting the ball up the floor sometimes and getting into second actions on offense, man, this defense is going to be ready to eat them alive. So they're going to have to bring everything they have. And
there's a good chance they'll end up with two picks in the top 10 in the draft next year, Okie City.
Yeah. They got a Clippers pick, and they got another one. I can't remember which one it was, but they have two that could be top 10. It's not unrealistic that they have the number 1 overall pick after winning their second straight title. So it's insane what they've been able to do, the way that they've been able to build it out, all of the draft picks that they have at their disposal, the young talent that they continue to find. I mean, they are head and shoulders above every other franchise in the league right now in terms of the way that they're operating, and it's pretty impressive to watch. Even if you don't like Shea flopping around and you don't like this or that, you cannot dispute the logic behind the way they're built. No,
that's for sure. Real quick, too, do you want to explain to me the asininity of Ja Morant, for whatever reason, getting into some kind of a just deciding to troll or mock one of the true consummate league professionals? Tell folks who are not familiar with that story what that's about, and explain to me why.
Yeah, so Memphis played Dallas the other night. Memphis won. Ja Morant was not playing. He was out once again, as he always is out. There was a point where late in the game, one of the Grizzlies players, Santi Aldama, took a bit of a cheap shot at Cooper Flagg, kind of grabbed his leg. It was a dirty play, got a flagrant 1 out of it, I think. And Klay Thompson kind of stood to his defense and said, hey, man, we can't be having that. He didn't try to fight him, but he stepped up and said, knock that off. And after the game was over, Ja came out and started jawing at Klay, pointed his finger right in his face. And I will say, there is history between Klay and the Grizzlies going back to Klay's days in Golden State. But, this is one of the reasons that many people are down on Ja Morant right now, is that it just doesn't look like anything that anyone is trying to tell him, in the way that he conducts himself and the way that he goes about his business is sinking in. And like, when you're in your street clothes, and you've been in street clothes for most of the last 3 years, and you're talking trash to one of the great players of all time with 4 championships, who has, always respected, kind of the game and his elders and done things the right way. Yeah, he'll talk trash, but when you're out, just stay out and don't inject yourself into it. And it just really came off as poor form and just kind of underscored some of the character questions that other teams have about Ja Morant and about really his future in this league.
Thank you for your flexibility today. Happy Thanksgiving, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks, Johnny.
Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours and to all the listeners out there. And, we'll talk to you next week, Dan. Thanks so much.
It's a deal. John Krasinski, kind enough to join us. Leber is going to join us in about 10, 15 minutes. Bonus Luigi to talk about the hottest team in all of hockey. That's at 5:30. We've got plenty more Vikings talking points to get to. Let's tackle another one, a juicy one, when we return.
Time now for the Vikings Report on the Fan, presented by Miller Lite. Vikings wide receiver Adam Thielen joins Dan Barreiro next. And
Hey, Rubes, this football season, Bell Bank is giving one KFAN listener each week $1,000 to pay it forward to a charity of their choice. Just head over to KFAN.com, keyword contest to learn more. Enter today.
3rd and 1, McCarthy.
KFAN.com, keyword contest.
My bad. Getting a little ahead of it, chat, as I am wont to do from time to time. We expect Leber in just a couple minutes. But let's go ahead and get to that Vikings talking point that I rudely interrupted Brett Blakemore with a bit on the early side. We call it basically Micah versus Christian Darrisaw. It's supposed to be a pretty Even matchup, not so much at some key times yesterday.
McCarthy with C.J. Hammond motion to the right, goes back to pass on first down, pumps and sacked. Michael Parsons got him. Michael Parsons with his 9th sack this year, second on McCarthy today. McDuffie has the other. It's a 7-yard loss. 2nd and 17. McCarthy shotgun, 3 receiving options to the left. Now Hawkinson in motion to the right, joining Josh Oliver. They're going to fake a toss right. McCarthy is attacked from behind by Michael Parsons, who ran around Christian Darrisaw like he was tied to a post. That's the 2nd sack for Parsons. 2nd and 12 for J.J. McCarthy from his own 17. Hawkinson in motion to the right. McCarthy clapping for the ball. False start, Darrisaw.
False start, number 71, offense. 5-yard penalty, second down.
I mean, this is awful. It's the only way to put it.
Yeah, PA's right. It was pretty much awful from start to finish, and that's the kind of game where you say, well, how much did the Packers give for Micah Parsons? It wasn't enough. I mean, the value of a defensive player who can be that devastating, who can be that destructive to everything that you're trying to do offensively, even if he's facing a big-time left tackle through some of it, incalculable in the way this game is played today, which, of course, tends to be more about offense than defense. Nacho Leber, kind enough to join us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. Now Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, our fine sponsor of the Leber segments. So, Nacho, you've, I'm sure, talked about this some, thought about it a decent amount. Do you believe, is there a point at which, even if you believe in what McCarthy represents and still believe in what he can, in what he at some point can represent, that a player needs to be taken off the field for a while for his own, mental health? Or do you say, if he's healthy enough, and we'll get to that part in a minute, nope, we're throwing him back in the deep end week after week after week. That's the only way we can get through this.
Well, up until literally 2 hours ago, I was thinking that you got to let these guys go through it. Mm-hmm. And, adversity is part of every sport, certainly a part of playing quarterback, and it's not always pretty, and you're not always loved, and it's not always the glory position that people think it is. I mean, there's going to be some hard times. And I have thought, even though he is performing at historically low levels, that you got to work through this. Mm-hmm. You just, more than anything, you have to see if your potential franchise quarterback has the mental fortitude and the mental toughness to lead the team once you start to figure out the other things. If it's the mechanical things, it's the technique things, if it's like a mental processing thing, whatever it is, it's kind of holding him back. You kind of want to see these other intangible leadership qualities that are very important to lead a franchise. So, yeah, I mean, I was kind of in that boat of let him, work with him, but you got to let him work through it on the field.
It looks as if there's at least a chance that the decision will be made by the doctors. He is in, as you know, JJ is in concussion protocol. And you know how this works. The conspiracy theory starts early that, well, it's another example of, is he really in concussion? Does he really need to be in concussion protocol? Is this the Vikings' own way, KOC's own way of easing the pressure of, forcing him to play another week? I don't know what you'd heard last night. I didn't think there was any indication after the game that there were any issues, although I will say on the scramble, I think KFC's saying they thought it was very late in the game, but there was a scramble earlier where he ends up getting hammered pretty good to the left, goes down hard and almost lays out, and then got pulled up real quick by a teammate. It might have been Hawkinson, but I thought his reaction on that play looked like he might have gotten hit a little bit or was shaken up. Did you have any indication last night that any of this was going on? No,
not at all, Dan. Not a second. I remember that play in real time, and I was like, oh, yeah, he got smushed pretty good. But, I wasn't thinking concussion. It didn't look like a violent hit, where he would suffer a concussion. And I know that it doesn't always have to be violent. I certainly have been a part of some of those where, even a glancing blow when you're not really ready for it can cause concussion-like symptoms. But that to me just looked like kind of took your breath away a little bit. And I understand why Hawkinson just kind of picked him up and was like, let's get back out there, bud, and kind of dust yourself off. I didn't see him, even in the clips and the replays that we've seen now on social media, it didn't look like he was woozy, wobbly. Didn't look like he needed to take a second to kind of gather himself. And so, I would have no idea that he was going through what he is saying is a concussion. And, certainly the independent neurologists that are at these games, that are up in the booth watching these things, it wasn't enough to
that's true.
Ring some alarm bells. Also, our own team doctors didn't look like they saw anything that was alarming as well. So it is sort of shocking that this is all transpiring.
Yeah, and so if ultimately he doesn't go, what is realistic to expect of Brosmer? You know how this works. I honestly believe. Look, I loved him as a college quarterback. I really did. I thought he obviously showed something to make the team as an undrafted free agent. And I'm not even here to tell you he can never be an NFL quarterback. But I am firmly of the belief, as much fun as we've had on this show, because Guardsy's sort of like the number one investor in Brosmer Brownstones, that if he hadn't played here at the University of Minnesota, 75% of the people who've been clamoring for him for like months would not even have raised a peep to this point. So what is realistic to expect of Brosmer if indeed he has to start against Seattle?
Well, it might be predicated on who's available at the offensive line. We've suffered 2 injuries to the left side of our offensive line. We don't know the injury updates there.
Yeah.
Having Brandell and School out there to protect him, I think, is going to be something that you're going to have to account for in the game plan. If that's the case, maybe it really is just, listen, get the ball out in 2 progressions, 2 reads, and see if we can just make a little something run after catch. It might just be quick game, play action, take maybe a deep shot every once in a while, but you got to be very careful and strategic as to not get him hit too much because, he's already your backup. You don't want to go to your 3rd stringer, which will be your 2nd stringer. And we keep saying this over and over again, and we see, some larger glimpses of it and actually trends in the last couple of games actually running the football with a lot of success. So it does seem like if you're going to give yourself a fighting chance in Seattle, then you do have to run the ball, and Brosmer's just going to have to be very quick. And he's got a great quick trigger. That's the one thing that they love about him is his quickness to decide and the quickness at which the ball comes out. And, obviously small sample size from all of us from Joe Public. We like what we see out of Brosmer. Let's just hope that it looks like that when it's an actual full game plan and it's live bullets.
When you watched McCarthy yesterday, is it, in your view, more of the same? Did you sense or pick up something different yesterday? Whether it was, again, fundamentals in terms of how he's throwing, or reaction time, or whether he's holding on to the ball too much? Was there a common thread yesterday to the dysfunction?
Yeah, I do feel like he's holding on to the ball too much. I do feel like he is missing and not anticipating guys to be open. When you go back and watch some of these routes in which, he's deeming as guys not open, he's got to scramble or he's got to rush to not maybe take a sack. Are guys open? And again, I don't know what the progression is. I don't know who's 1, who's 3, who's 4. Like, I obviously know where the checkdowns are, but there does seem to be this overriding theme that he's not delivering the football as these guys are coming out of breaks. And if he does anticipate these throws, they are open. KOC is designing these things to be open. Mm-hmm. And it's got to be frustrating when you're calling the right play against the right coverage and the ball's not being delivered on time when it's supposed to be. And then he goes out on other plays and takes unnecessary sacks. You know, there are plays and game situations. I mean, the one that was infuriating was, you know, I think it was 2nd and 10 at the end of the first half, and he goes out there, I think it was right after he made that nice throw to Justin Jefferson on the left sideline, where he takes a sack. I'm like, dude, you can't take a sack in that moment. You know, thank goodness we have a kicker with a great leg and a lot of confidence, but he almost took us out of field goal range. You got to have better game awareness in some of these deals, and it's those little things that I think kind of take away from sometimes, you know, a good throw or a good series, or, oh my gosh, we kind of look like we have something and we got a little bit of rhythm, and then it's like one fatal mistake that kind of ruins the whole thing.
You know, I'm curious to get your view on this, because you were in locker rooms and you can speak to this obviously with a lot more authority than we can. The players, you know, Justin Jefferson, hell, Metellus, everybody continues to say the things that I'm sure organizationally they love. You know, we're standing by our guy. We know it's going to take time. There's patience, etc. But I tend to think these are human beings. And so even if that's what they're saying and what they want to believe, I got to believe there's a wearing effect eventually that has to be part of the decision-making process for any coach. The deal of potentially losing, you know, other players, or even if, again, they're mouthing every right cliche under these conditions, that they may well feel differently internally, because I assume players are wired the same way as everybody. They're ultimately about performance, right? They want to see good performances around them. They want to see, they want the best chance to succeed as a team. And that's all based on performance, not just words. So how much are you concerned about that? Do you sense any of it? And is it inevitable if these issues continue to rear their head in the short term?
I think that guys they're willing to be reasonable, understanding that they were all once rookies before. And, you know, you're all a first-time player. And we all know that he's not a rookie, but, you know, he's essentially a rookie. Right. That, of course, there's patience, but like you said, there is the human element of, you know, you've seen the metrics on some of these wide receivers, and they chart, you know, how far they run, how much max effort they're giving. I mean, can you imagine running a couple miles for a game and not getting the football ever thrown to you and not feeling like there's a hope that you're going to have the football thrown to you? And then when it does, it might be so inaccurate that it puts you in a dangerous position. You know, I would think the human element, and again, I can't run more than 100 meters without getting like tired and wanting to take a long break. I can imagine going through a whole game where you're given max effort to break off these routes, to do all these things, to, you know, hand-to-hand combat with some of these cornerbacks, and then not get the football ever, or not get it in an accurate spot, and I got to make a tough catch. So I could see how over time, when you don't see the improvement that we think is reasonable, that you would lose a little bit of that confidence. And I think that is just human nature. And, you know, you couple that in with the situation he's dealing with right now, and it's like, come on, man. Yeah. Like, you want to be our guy. You got to be available. You know, we all know the old adage, you know, you can't make the club in the tub, and you got to scrap and claw and do whatever you can to be on the field. And it seems like he just keeps getting banged up, and you can't make these improvements and build that confidence when you're always on the sideline. That's
a very fair point. I have no question. It looked to me, Leber, like this was the first game where there was a significant KOC adjustment in the way he called it. And you can argue that until the muffed punt, it was working, at least to the extent that they were staying in it, right? They weren't in a great position, but they were in it at that point. And then that kind of changed. It felt like it almost changed everything. And then they obviously couldn't move the ball at all in the second half. But, you know, even in the types of passing game that he was calling, or pass plays he was calling, and the number of times, even on 3rd and short or 2nd and short, where he was handing the ball off again, to me, that's the furthest KOC has gone to adjust to the realities in the short term of what he might be dealing with to try to get his kid quarterback over the hump.
Yeah, I think he's done a nice job of, again, the last couple of games, and I'm, you know, leaning more on the run game versus the pass game. And I think there's obviously some questionable decisions as far as the play calling. Don't love the Hawkinson, third and 1 direct snap. I mean, probably not the guy that's
yes.
is going to get you that yard. But as far as the philosophy goes, I mean, we were definitely more run versus pass at halftime. And like you said, it was working. And I think both teams kind of took a similar approach because of the way the defenses can play. And so both sides really kind of played it was a boring brand of football, but it's winning brand of football as long as you don't turn the ball over and make the catastrophic mistake. And that's what ended up happening in the second half. And, I kind of alluded this to like my feelings after the game, that I'm more disappointed in how the lack of response from the team when things started to cascade downhill.
Mm-hmm.
And all we've heard from this team ever since KOC got here is the word resilience. We've been down in games before, but gosh darn it, these guys are resilient. They fought back and we won this game. And hey, against all odds, we overcame this. We're so resilient. And then we have one special teams mistake. 2 plays later, they score, and you could just feel it. Like it was almost over at that point when we look back in hindsight. And, we go 2 more drives on offense. We give up 3 sacks on 3 3-and-outs. And it's like, what is going on? Like, how did you guys implode so dramatically? I've never seen that from KOC's team.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Ben Leber is joining us. We might as well get to the Hop Splash player of the game. These are always harder, I think, when the team loses, but not impossible. Because occasionally somebody plays well or somebody grabs your attention. Who's the lucky recipient this week?
Well, let's go with the guy that I did watch. I think a lot of people were watching when they could on the TV screens to see how Ryan Kelly was playing. It's nice to have him back in the lineup. And to me, he looked like he went out there and played without any reservations. I'm sure that, he actually mentioned it after the game that there was a couple snaps early on where it's like, maybe kind of testing the waters out subconsciously. But once you start running downhill and having success, he was out there full go. And I thought he played well. They did a lot of running to the right-hand side of that offensive line, and he's a big part of that success. And I did not see any major inside penetration on the pass rush other than maybe, one Micah Parsons A-gap blitz. I thought he played really well. So let me give the Hop Splash player of the game to him.
Defense eventually also seemed to wither in terms of when Green Bay just decided on that one drive, all they did was hand the ball off, and then they said, we'll settle for the 3. But I also feel like, when an offense is sputtering to the degree that the Vikings was sputtering again, that offense, that it does, I know it's not supposed to matter, but I think it kind of reduced to almost 0 the margin for error of the defense. I still have problems with the fact that they can't seem to get some takeaways, right? You got to get that at some point. But I think the entire team gets dragged down a little bit when you're talking about that sort of performance offensively with your quarterback playing at that level. I refuse to believe. I think it affects everybody, whether it should or not. What do you think?
Oh, for sure it does. Yes. Again, I remember lots of times when we were defensively sitting on the bench, we're trying to get a little rest, a little water, and you look up and it's already, 2nd and 12 after a negative play on first down. Then you see a sack and you're like, then on the sideline, it's yelling punt team ready. And you're like, geez, really? Already we got to go back out there.
Yeah.
And then you just see how they're not able to move the football. Yeah. It is sort of a hopeless feeling, and you do your best to be like, all right, guys, the game's on us. We got to pick up our offense. You try your best. And, when the other team is just, they're patient. They're grinding things out. It's not easy to get your hands on the football because they're not throwing the ball. You're getting worn down. Yeah, it is. It's difficult to stay in those moments and just say like, oh, well, offense will deal with offense. We'll handle our job over here. No, it's a team effort. And sometimes and a lot of times, what happens over there, you feed off of it and you try to block out that negativity, but on the flip side, when they have big plays and splashy plays, and momentum shifting plays, well, you betcha that we feel that too, because that brings us some juice and energy. So it's you can't have it both ways. You can't be like, we can only accept it when it's great positive news and we have to block it out. No, it pretty much permeates across the whole sideline.
You know what gets lost entirely, well, I'd say entirely, to a large percentage anyway, through all of this, is the place kicker. I mean, I'm trying to think and project what several Vikings teams, good ones, might have been like if they had a kicker anything like your guy Reichert. I mean, he's absurd.
Oh, everything I just said about the defense, I mean, that is the one thing that I will give kickers so much credit for, is they have to be in their own headspace. You know, they're on the sidelines too. You know, they're over there, they're feeling the game ebb and flow, and they celebrate the big plays, or can they? They probably can. You know, they have to be just so headstrong. And when my number is called and when I'm asked to go out there and kick, I got to put all emotions aside and just become this sort of repetitive machine that is the kicking motion, and just focus on what I can do. And yeah, I think that's really impressive that we have a guy that is that professional, that talented and skilled, and that confident. I mean, I think it's hard to do, especially on a team that is on a losing football team right now.
How do you view, obviously the division race is pretty much lost here at this point from a Viking standpoint, but how do you view, again, the Bears are still in first. Now I think they play the Eagles this week in Philly, and their schedule the rest of the way, I think statistically is the toughest after having a lot of, the easiest part of it, their last place schedule earlier. So who's the team to beat in the division? I find it hard to believe it would be the Bears, but is it Green Bay? Is it Detroit? Or what do you think now?
You know, I still think it's probably the Lions, only because they've been there, done that. Even though the Bears, Ben Johnson has been there and done that, but it's a different animal. I think that when you're the head guy and you're in charge of sort of the mood going into these postseason situations, I'd put my money on the more seasoned team. And I think the Lions are that seasoned team, even though they've got a lot of chinks in their armor. I think the Bears are rightfully number 2. And as much as the Packers just sort of systematically beat us down yesterday, I still don't trust their lack of firepower on offense to get into the postseason and really make some noise. So I think the Bears, they've got a lot of weapons, and when you've got a quarterback that can get out of trouble, make plays at the drop of a hat, I put them at number 2 and Lions at number 1.
Well, Blakemore's very unhappy right here. You know, Guardsy's out. He's in the Bahamas right now, so you've hurt Brett Blakemore's feelings, if it matters to you.
Leber picked the Packers to win 6 games this year, so I think we're okay.
Well, okay, there it is. See?
Yeah, I don't really care about Brett's feelings, to be quite honest with you.
I know.
It's not high on your list?
It's not really that high on my list. I mean, really, it's not. I love him, but the fact that he's a Packers fan, I'm just kind of lumping them all in together. I don't care about their feelings. I mean, they don't care about ours. So.
Is Micah Parsons this good, or was Darisaw that bad on a couple key plays, or more complicated than that? Because he certainly did Micah make his presence felt at key moments yesterday.
Oh my gosh, no, he's that good. I mean, especially when you see it up close with your own eyes, you're like, wow, I've never seen as powerful and as quick of a get-off and a violent get-off that he has. I mean, and it's so impressive that he doesn't ever seem like he comes off the field. He can play with such a burst, and I know that he's probably not the strongest run defender, but you make your money getting after the quarterback and causing chaos, and he can do that, especially, when they line him up as a rusher in the A and B gaps, and he's screaming downhill like you see Blake Cashman and Eric Wilson, and you get that body type and that explosiveness running downhill along with the other guys. And, now they have Lucas Van Ness back. I mean, that's a huge thing I think they will probably be talking about today, is moving, Rashawn Gary now around a little bit more and getting more out of him and putting him in other situations. Because, he started off hot, but hasn't really done much and hasn't been the impact player that they've been hoping the last couple of weeks. And then you get Lucas Van Ness back, who's a really solid pass rusher, somebody you have to think about. And then you get Micah Parsons that floats around. I mean, that is a really, really tough group. And yes, he is that good.
Yeah, that's a look. Certainly look. We're just saying, I mean, the way the league is set up to just have any defensive player or players who can be that disruptive, it's just, it's so unusual, and I think that's why it stands out, why it's so valuable, right?
Well, again, I feel like we talk about this every draft season. Every time the draft comes around, I would much rather take a guy like him or a guy like Sauce Gardner. Give me a Micah Parsons versus a Sauce Gardner. Fine, if you happen to fall into the number one cornerback in the second round, great. But if you're asking me to use a first round draft pick, I'm thinking defensive line. Obviously on defense, but if I'm saying defensive line, edge rusher, find some guys that strike some fear in the offensive line. And I guarantee you that every offensive line that plays the Green Bay Packers, they have that guy circled. They have a special package for him. They probably have certain audibles for him because you have to know where he's at every single snap.
All right, so the next game is Sunday in Seattle. Maybe Brosmer. Maybe I'll ask it this way. What is your gut? I mean, my gut is Brosmer's going to start. And I don't know how bad this is, but I just sense. I mean, if you go back, if you remember, and I'm not saying that McCarthy was not injured originally, that original injury, but the same thing. I think we talked about it the night of the game or during the game. I don't even think there was any discussion about him being hurt, and then he ends up being hurt. So my gut is he's not going to play this Sunday. What's the KOC message? If I guess either way, but especially if Brosmer is the QB, it's a tough place to play. They're a damn good team. You got Sam Darnold over there. What's the KOC message?
Well, as I was saying, I guess before, just make the quick decision, and we'll live with whatever happens after that.
I like that.
I think the last thing you can do is hold on to the football, take an unnecessary sack, potentially get injured, potentially create a turnover because you take a sack and you happen to fumble the football. I think it's just design some plays to get it out of his hands, and maybe he really is a savant, and they love him for the right reasons, and you don't have to pare down much. Maybe he comes out and really surprises us because they seem to really, really like a lot of the things that he does. And so, but going back to McCarthy, my gut tells me in the concussion world that we live in now, I don't see, most of the times, I rarely see a player go on the concussion protocol list on a Monday and is cleared by a Sunday.
Exactly. Yeah.
And even with that being said, if we go back to all the reasons why McCarthy couldn't come back from his high ankle sprain or wouldn't be ready, they really want that starting quarterback to get starting quarterback reps starting on Wednesday. And if he's not going to be starting and getting those first team reps on Wednesday, then even if he's cleared by Friday or Saturday, I don't feel like they feel confident that he can go out there and execute the game plan at the highest level. So my gut tells me he will stay in concussion protocol the whole week, probably won't take any reps, and hopefully be back by next week.
Thanks for the help. As always, happy Thanksgiving and safe travels back out west for the big one in Seattle, and we'll talk next week.
All right, sounds good. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Nacho. That's Ben Leber, former Minnesota Viking. Now, of course, big-time contributor on several programs on the Fan and sideline reporter / analyst on the Minnesota Vikings audio network. So we call it now, right? Not entertainment network. Isn't it the audio network? The Vikings audio network, correct? Van? I've got some text to get to. Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line, which has now been rebooted and seems to be working at 64686 that are important to address. A couple things I need to get off my chest regarding the whole Brosmer discussion and perhaps a bit of a misrepresentation of the position of the host in that regard. And then we will prepare for some hockey talk. Let's get some happy talk going. Another day, another shutout for your Minnesota Wild. When do we play next? When are we back in action?
Soon enough.
I want us to play every night right now.
Seriously.
As hot as we are. We'll get Louis on all of that and maybe even his own theory regarding the Vikings quarterback saga. That'll be at about 5:30 or